Previously in Ultima I, the final showdown with the evil wizard Mundane. After saving Sosaria from the wizard Mundane, peace and prosperity have returned to the land. Unfortunately, this would not last for long. Ultima II begins as, unbeknownst to all, Mundane had a protege, the sorceress Minax, who is somewhat annoyed at our hero who just happened to turn her mentor into a pile of smoldering ash. In her rage, she decided to take revenge on Sosaria, and also the home of the stranger who struck down Mundane, Earth. Researching magic to twist dimensions and time, Minax learned how to open rifts in time and space, gateways through which creatures and people can travel through. Using her powers to affect time to manipulate the world, twisting the peaceful and wise civilizations into those intolerant and prone to war, she manipulates the course of history, which culminates in the nuclear destruction of almost the entire population of Earth. And here, our hero enters the story, with one purpose in mind: to use Minax's time gates and prevent this tragedy from happening. The world of Ultima II consists of 5 different maps in different time periods, modeled on Earth in one shape or another, with one exception. That exception is the time of legends, an era described as time before time, peopled by creatures of myth and lore. The root of all that governs what is to come. This is where Minax is believed to be, spreading her seeds of evil through all time. Then there is the prehistoric time, millions of years in the past before the Earth had formed into the shape we all recognize it as. The dawn of civilization, where the Earth is now in a recognizable form and ancient civilizations are thriving. The year 1990. The near future of the release date of the game, 1982, where Earth is still mostly as we know it, but with the monsters of legend roaming the lands. Nationalistic countries spying on each other with distrust, preparing for another war. And the aftermath, the future which Minax's manipulations has wrought. Much of Earth has been devastated by nuclear fire, and very few beings still survive. A warning for what is to be our fate if Minax is not stopped. The character creation is very similar to Ultima. You choose your attributes with a minimum of 10 points allocated to each attribute. You choose your species, class and sex. Again, all of these give some bonuses to the attributes, and choosing between the 2 magic-using classes locks you out of some available spells. As an update to the character attribute system from the previous game, now attributes also govern which pieces of gear you can and cannot equip. After creating your character, you're greeted by a familiar-looking top-down perspective and an unfamiliar land. All around you is wilderness. A dead and desolate wasteland, only known as Canada. From here your journey begins, as you explore the lands for settlements and clues for what you're actually meant to do. Compared to Ultima II is more advanced on many fronts. For example, now a large portion of the game is spent going from one settlement to another talking to people. This feature, while commonplace now, was a pretty big deal in 1982. Granted, each character in the world only has one thing to say, with a few exceptions. But going around the world, talking to each of these people to find the clues they have for you is an important part of the game, since without prior knowledge or these clues, it's practically impossible to accidentally win the game. Many other characters have fluff text, which has no real meaning to the quest you're on, or some people are even deliberately giving you false information. But it is nice to see the seeds of in-game world building grow. After all, being able to talk to people is a stepping stone to having actual options on what to talk about. This also gives you a reason to travel to all of the time periods, find all the settlements and talk to all the people in them. Something that was severely lacking in the first Ultima, a reason to explore the world. The tavern keepers also return to give you hints about the game mechanics in exchange for tips. This time they're not completely random, and while they may seem cryptic, which admittedly they are also extremely important for your ability to complete the game, as they are clues about where to get certain items and what their use is. Which brings us to another advancement from Ultima, an inventory system that contains more than just your weapons and armor. Instead, this time some enemies drop loot items which have differing uses. This new system, while an advancement, is also one of the parts that can cause a lot of grey hairs to the player. Not only do you need specific random drops from specific enemies, there's also an enemy type that can steal items from you. For example, let's take the item called Blue Tassels. They are required to board a sailboat. Not only can it take a while for you to farm a set of blue tassels, it can take another long while for a boat to spawn. And to make it even worse, the thieves in the world can steal the blue tassels from you, making you unable to board your sailboat again until you get another set of tassels. And no, killing the thief will not give you your tassels back. So the save everywhere function is a very good tool for any player. This is mostly a problem at the very beginning of the game though, because when you do get a boat you are practically invincible while you're in it. You can sail around the world, shooting all of the enemies with the cannons of the ship, making farming golden items much faster than it's on foot. And the best of all, on a ship you don't spend any food as you move. Exploring the world is somewhat more complicated than it was in Ultima. Most of it is because you need to figure out how to navigate the time gates that are spread around the world. It can be confusing at first, but the game does come with a map that makes the process of understanding the time gates a little bit easier. The map also starts another mainstay of the Ultima games, the usage of a runic alphabet system. Learning this will be very useful for the later games. While searching the settlements, you're likely to encounter someone telling you to go to Hotel California, and perhaps someone who may tell you to offer the hotel clerk gold. These clues are directing you towards the new leveling up system. In the first Ultima, you gained better attributes by sailing from one magical signpost to another, interacting with them until your stats were maxed, or you got too bored to continue. In Ultima II, however, it's no longer quite as simple. Instead, you go to the Hotel California in San Antonio, Texas, chuck the clerk a bag of gold, and either get a hearty "thank you" or "alakazam." If it's the first, well, congratulations, you've just lost your money. If it's the latter, the clerk has just raised one of your attributes by 4 points. This makes leveling up your character expensive and very random. However, you can make it not random by installing what is called the Ultima II upgrade. The upgrade allows you to choose which stat to raise and removes the random chance of the leveling up not happening at all. I'm partially using the patch as well while recording because this is what the game looks like without it. CGA does have its merits, but these days I prefer my games not to cause me a headache, so the EGA tileset from the upgrade patch is quite nice for me. If you do want the authentic experience, the upgrade allows you to not have the leveling up system changed, in which case it will work the same way as it worked in the original version. Healing, on the other hand, is basically the same as it was in Ultima. You go to Lord British's castle, located in the UK, pay him a tribute, and receive health in return. As you're exploring, you may notice there are plenty of places you seem unable to explore. Yes, you have plenty of skull keys, but you still cannot open any of the doors. Well, of course not. What did you think? Skull keys are obviously used to fly airplanes. That's silly, people. Thinking skull keys are used to open doors. You need completely different kinds of keys for that. To finish your exploring and reach the parts you've been unable to reach so far, it's time to choose a town. Any town, really. And then go on a murderous rampage, slaughtering countless guards to satisfy your need for keys. While going through the settlements, you may also find several people talking about someone called Father Antos, and it seems like they really want you to find him and get his blessing. This frequency of hints is an indicator that this is somehow related to the main quest of the game. Another way to find out more about this quest is to consult the oracles found in several towns. These oracles offer valuable information for a hefty price. 4,500 gold to be exact, or 0 if you just happen to have 900 gold and save before going to the oracle, paying the oracle and writing all of the clues down and then reloading the game. But it's not like someone would do a thing like that, but it's theoretically possible. During your quest, you will again venture into space. Unfortunately, unlike in the first Ultima, you can't just go to the nearest blacksmith to purchase a space shuttle. Instead, the only working space shuttles are now fiercely guarded by the KGB. And to use the shuttle, you'll need some trilithium as well. If you've been farming enough gold to buy better gear and level yourself up, you'll likely already have some. But there is another way, which is to explore the numerous dungeons all over the world. In Ultima II, the dungeons have been in some ways improved from the previous game, but they're also more dangerous and ultimately kinda pointless. There are now two types of dungeons: traditional dungeons and towers. The main purpose of these is to get to the final level where you can find stashes of trilithium. Problem here is that while the dungeons are slightly more appealing to the eye, they're also dark, which means you'll need single-use torches you also get as enemy drops to explore them. The dungeons are also bigger in every imaginable way. The floors are larger and there are more of them, but at least they are no longer randomly generated, so mapping them once will save you a lot of time if you're doing multiple playthroughs. There is also a new feature where the dungeons have traps in them that are automatically disarmed by using tools. Without these tools, the traps trigger and you instantly die. And again, since you cannot buy these tools, they are only gained from defeating enemies, meaning that while farming for equipment you need in order to explore the dungeons, you're most likely getting all the money you need and the items you need. So for the marginal benefit of having guaranteed trilithium at the end versus just going around the overworld farming every imaginable object, well, it's up to you to decide whether entering the dungeons is worth your time. Stealing a shuttle, you are finally able to reach space, assuming you're wearing powered armor, because if not, you will die. Or in my case, the game will glitch out and just put me back on the ground. Gone is the top view and the combat. Instead, you navigate space using Xeno, Yaku, and Zebo coordinates. Once again, the manual comes in handy, with a map of the solar system marking coordinates of several planets. Landing on the planets, however, is quite risky. You have no control over the craft as you're orbiting it, and you need to land on grassland. Otherwise, the ship will explode and you'll have to start your exploring again. Some of the planets have settlements, where you're given some clues you've likely already seen, and you find, let's say, interesting people. None of these are what you're looking for, though, as Father Antos is nowhere to be found in the known universe. Instead, he's on an uncharted planet you only find out about in the prehistoric times. Traveling there, failing to land several times, causing you to shout at the screen and take a short breather, you find Father Antos, who gives you his blessing. To me, it's a bit of a shame that the space segment has been toned down so much. It is still visually interesting for the time, but feels like in the shape it is now, it could have been dropped in favor of areas unreachable by most means. And instead of a space shuttle, you would steal an aircraft that can travel to these places. Back on Earth comes one of the most cryptic parts of the game, which the game does hint at, but only partially. Yes, the Oracle's riddle directs you towards an old man who will have a clue for you, and it's literally a person behind a locked door who tells you they are an old man and are below text that says a tree. What the game does not tell you, however, is that you need to shove at least 500 gold into his palms, and then he'll give you the ring, but only after you've received the blessing of Father Antos on Planet X. If you give him the wrong amount or you don't have the blessing, he will still happily accept the money, but you will gain absolutely nothing in return. In San Antonio, you can also receive a unique weapon for which there are no real clues in the game as far as I know. To receive it, you need to break into the prison, murder a guard, enter a specific cell where a prisoner tells you they have the quick blade, and once more you need to have the impulse to give them 500 gold, which will give you the sword in return. Of course, murdering a guard will cause every other guard in town to come after you like a ton of bricks, so it's up to you again to decide whether this is worth it. After receiving the ring, whenever you feel up to the task, it's time to face the greatest challenge so far: the Time of Legends. Even the entrance to the age seems dangerous. Behind mountains, there are already hordes of powerful enemies waiting for you, just waiting for you to get close so they can cast their spells over the mountains, as you slowly try to push your way through. After a long and arduous battle, you're able to explore the rest of the ancient continent. Here is also the perfect time to do some final farming if you feel like it. If you get a ship to spawn, it's actually quite easy, albeit boring, to sail between the continent's eastern and western shores, just waiting for enemies to spawn and then mowing them down with the ship's cannons. When you feel like you've farmed enough, you grip your ring and brave the castle of the evil sorceress Minax. Without the ring, the force fields in the fortress would vaporize you. Pushing yourself through the hordes of enemies, you finally face her, Minax, in her chamber, taunting you. But you know you can defeat her. This is what the entire quest has been about. You get near, strike her with all your might, and she teleports away. It's clear that Minax has definitely learned something from Mundane, making you run around her fortress so you can kill her, as she teleports between two chambers each time you do damage to her, forcing you to try and avoid her deadly minions with the use of strange coins that stop time for a few moves. Finally, you manage to strike the final blow and time immediately starts to fix itself. Gone is the nuclear devastation. The tide of history returns to its intended path, and the world is as if nothing had been wrong in the first place. Even though people may not know about your heroic deeds that have been erased from the course of history, you can rest assured that it's your heroism that has ensured that the world would not face total annihilation. Ultima II in many ways is an improvement over Ultima. The world map remains in function, mostly unchanged, but now there are multiple variations to reflect the time-traveling aspect of the game. The dungeons, while still not pretty, are less visually jarring than they used to be. And there are multiple new mechanics added for traps, stealing and item usage for several different purposes. The talking system also is a massive update over the first game, with there now being an actual story in the game, and instead of just going into a dungeon to kill enemies, there is now an incentive to explore the world and find clues to figure out what your quest is. Here we are really starting to see the proper template of computer RPGs, and how the genre has evolved from these very humble beginnings, and a sign of where the series would be moving towards, slowly morphing the focus from just killing monsters to trying to decipher the world and learn all of its intricacies to find out how to complete your quest and finish the game. Admittedly, in Ultima II, it's still relatively raw, again partially due to technical limitations. It's difficult to have proper clues when the NPCs in the game have one short line of text available for their dialogue options. This does make actually figuring out what to do a bit more difficult than it could be, and the lack of some vital clues in the game do make winning the game a little bit more about chance than I feel like it should be. Still, Ultima II is the first in the series that I'd really say I enjoyed. The first one was a nice relic of gaming history, sure, but Ultima II is already more enjoyable as a game. Sure, it requires being able to put yourself into a proper retro mood, as it's far more raw than many other games. But if you manage to do that, the game can actually be quite enjoyable. Well, that is it for this time, and until next time when I tackle Ultima III. Thank you all for watching, and Fintrovert, signing out.